What is piety? That is among the many questions we'll investigate in today's discussion of Plato's Euthyphro. This is a new series for my channel, where I'll provide a commentary and introduction for Plato's works. There are not a lot of resources on YouTube covering the details of many of his various writings. However, this is not to imply complete absence. But as we shall see, Plato's dialogues can be confusing, open-ended, and up for interpretation. Therefore, having a variety of voices and styles to choose from could be useful. But without further ado, let's jump right in. So the Euthyphro begins with its two characters, Socrates and Euthyphro, encountering each other in the agora, or market in Athens. Both men have preliminary legal business at the court. Socrates stands accused of corrupting the youth, and of inventing new gods and denying the existence of old ones. Euthyphro is the plaintiff, bringing a suit against his own father for murder. Euthyphro's father tied up and threw into a ditch a laborer who had murdered another servant. The laborer died, of course, and now Euthyphro, contrary to the wishes of his father and family, seeks justice. Euthyphro's decision was controversial because in ancient Greece, only the relatives of the dead had any standing. Also because the father killed a murder, which may have made it justifiable. And finally, because it was considered impious for a son to prosecute a father. The last point, at least, Euthyphro says, is ridiculous. You see, Euthyphro believes he has special knowledge and insight into religion and what is pious or holy. Socrates jumps on this and points out that as one of his charges is impiety, it would be greatly beneficial if Euthyphro could share with him his deep wisdom on the topic. And so Socrates demands to know from Euthyphro, the self-proclaimed expert here, what the fundamental nature of piety actually is. Well, some perceive sincerity in Socrates' search for truth from others throughout Plato's corpus. I have always seen him as consistently mocking and sarcastic, particularly in his performative displays of friendship and deference. This is not a new observation, of course. It is called Socratic irony. The matter, though, is of how much emphasis you place on it. Some scholars, such as Leo Strauss, went so far as to suggest material like The Republic was meant to be satirical. I do not know about that specifically, but I do think there are some comic undertones in a lot of the dialogues. In any case, sorry for the tangent. Let us continue. So Socrates asks, and what is piety, and what is impiety? To which Euthyphro replies, piety is doing as I am doing. That is to say, prosecuting anyone who is guilty of murder, sacrilege, or of any similar crime, whether he be your father or mother, or whoever he may be, that makes no difference, and not to prosecute then is impiety. Socrates is not impressed with Euthyphro's first definition of piety. Euthyphro has made an error common in Platonic dialogues. He gave an example of the thing he was trying to define, without actually defining it. Socrates is looking for a general standard here that determines what is pious and what is impious. Simply listing pious actions fails to define the underlying idea of piety itself. So Euthyphro clarifies his answer. Piety, then, is that which is dear to the gods, and impiety is that which is not dear to them. This answer is better than the first because it at least attempts to establish an all-encompassing principle of piety. Unfortunately, it is fallible. Remember, this was written in the context of the Greek pantheon of gods. Your Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Hephaestus, and the like, who famously constantly disagreed and fought one another, directly and indirectly. So Socrates must ask, then the same things are hated by the gods and loved by the gods, and are both hateful and dear to them. True, says Euthyphro. And upon this view, the same things, Euthyphro, will be pious and also impious. So I should suppose. From here, Socrates kind of sets Euthyphro up by modifying for him his definition of piety into what all the gods love is pious. Euthyphro takes the bait, and his admission prompts Socrates to present what is famously known as the Euthyphro Dilemma. The question goes as follows. Is the pious being loved by the gods because it is pious, or is it pious because it is being loved by the gods? The answer to this question is still debated in philosophy and theology today, albeit in a different, more modern formulation. I'll repeat a rough version of it here, as it may clarify the Euthyphro Dilemma for you. Does God demand what is moral because it is moral in and of itself? Or do the commands of God itself create what is moral? Okay, now we'll go back to the text, but I warn you, what will immediately follow will be the most convoluted and complicated part of the video. Alright, so Socrates ultimately demonstrates that the God loved is not the same as the pious. To do so, he makes a series of analogies, which I will distill into the most straightforward representation I can. So Socrates explains that we speak of distinct things when we talk about something carried and something carrying, and of something loved and something loving. Now, something is not being carried because it is something carried. Rather, something is carried because it is being carried. I know. Stay with me. Simply put, an object is not being carried because it has the intrinsic quality of carried. Rather, an object is carried because it is in the active state of being carried. Likewise, you don't love something because it has the trait of loved. On the contrary, a thing is loved because it is being loved. Okay, now remember that Euthyphro said, what all the gods love is pious. In other words, what is being loved by all the gods is pious. And as we demonstrated, you don't love something because it's loved. Therefore, the gods can't love piety because it's loved. They have to love piety for itself, and it has to be that piety is loved because it is being loved. This all means that piety has a definition and existence independent of that which is God-loved. So Euthyphro's definition of piety is inadequate, because all the gods loving what is pious is incidental to the actual nature of piety. You still here? If so, you probably deserve some kind of medal or something. And if you think all this language stuff was bad, just wait until you see the Cratylus. Anyway, so Euthyphro is kind of tapped out at this point, and so Socrates suggests that perhaps all that is pious is of necessity just, which Euthyphro tenuously accepts. Socrates then inquires, and is then all that is just pious? Or is all that is pious just, but not all that is just pious, but some of it is and some is not? I do not follow what you're saying, Socrates, replies Euthyphro. Yet you are younger than I by as much as you are wiser. As I say, you are making difficulties because of your wealth of wisdom. Pull yourself together, my dear sir. What I am saying is not difficult to grasp. God damn! Bro just got BTFO'd. The point Socrates and Euthyphro go on to establish is that, like how all odd numbers are numbers, but not all numbers are odd, piety is a part of justice, but not all justice is related to being pious. So the investigation now is over what part of just piety is. And Euthyphro is on the rebound here. He has an idea. I think, Socrates, that the godly and pious is the part of the just that is concerned with the care of the gods, while that concerned with the care of men is the remaining part of justice. But what does the care of the gods mean? It cannot be a care akin to that of caring for horses or dogs and providing for their betterment. It would simply be blasphemous to suggest humans care for gods like that. Could this care of the gods be characterized as some kind of service? But what could the gods even get out of using people as servants? Could piety be, as Socrates suggests, a knowledge of how to give to and beg from the gods? But what could we possibly give to the gods that's useful? Well, says Euthyphro, what else do you think than honor, reverence, and what I mentioned just now, to please them? Socrates hesitates for a moment, then asks, piety, then, is pleasing to the gods, but not beneficial or dear to them? I should say that nothing could be dearer. Then once more the assertion is repeated that piety is dear to the gods. Certainly. We have gone backwards. Once again, piety is being defined as what is pleasing and loved by the gods. Socrates wants to start from the beginning. He is unwilling to give up his quest for a definition of piety. But then Euthyphro quickly says, some other time, Socrates, for I am in a hurry now, and it is time for me to go. And thus the dialogue ends in aporia. The question is never answered. Whew, that was kind of a lot, and the Euthyphro is one of the shortest ones. Hopefully this introduction and commentary was serviceable. I was quite uncertain, and I suppose I still am, about how to best cover philosophical texts like this. If you have any comments on that, feel free to share. But not only that, consider, what do you think piety is? What did you think of the Euthyphro Dilemma? Is it a false dilemma? If you found this video helpful or informative, please consider subscribing. Alright, I won't keep you. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good one.